everyone. It's good to have you with us for this event.
Don't ever give up.
Athletes, huddle up. It's time to begin. Get focused. Let's go.
Everybody, welcome to Overtime with Coach Blue and Athletic Director Marissa. So glad to have you guys here today. And we're going to be talking a little bit about some questions and some Q&A that you guys had, specifically about communication, holidays rolling up. Now that Sober October is officially over, and it seems as though Christmas is in full swing, we forget that there's that funny little holiday called Thanksgiving right in the middle, right?
It's on the way.
And in fact, I saw a TikTok today. It was kind of funny. It was showing this big ghost that someone had like put in their living room, and then it was just a sheet they pulled over, and it was a Christmas tree underneath. It's pretty funny.
Smart.
I'm like, there you go. Christmas tree's done. But yeah, I want to talk a little bit about some stress that might plague you from a question from one of our listeners. But before we do that, we want to give thanks to everybody who jumped on and supported our Patreon program. You just got another bonus episode today. I took a deep dive, Marissa, on the conflicting studies on alcohol. Sounds like a boring topic, but no. I saw this, and I want to see if I can get this gal on our podcast. And it might be a little bit too emotional at this time, but I want to put I want to plant a seed in her heart. I was going down a rabbit hole today with some new studies that came out from the drug czar, from President Biden's cabinet. And it was interesting because this news came out in August, and it said that new recommendations for alcohol consumption, going from the last no more than 1 drink per day female, no more than 2 drinks for male a day, is now saying no one should drink more than 2 alcoholic beverages a week.
A week.
But as I went in to find out the study and to find out where this came from, I got so many conflicting like studies. Yeah. One saying it's good for your heart, but it can cause cardiovascular disease. It's good for this, but it can cause cancer.
It's a lot of
the stupidest thing about research is that you can make statistics say anything.
Yeah, you can find the research to support what you believe.
But it all kind of boiled down to the situation that happened in May, and it was a sad situation. It was in South Carolina. It was a wedding that was going on. And this bride and this groom, had all their friends and family at this venue. And, the ceremony went off without a hitch. Everything was great. A couple hours there just celebrating this union between these two. And they had decided to have all their party wave goodbye as they sat in the back of a golf cart and, drove down this picturesque, like little dirt road and then over to where their car would be so they could go start their lives together. And as they were driving their golf cart down this little dirt road and onto the main road, the bride leans over to her fiance, and the last thing that she ever said to him was, "I hope this day never ends." And then moments later, a young woman doing 65 miles an hour in a 25-mile zone just crushed him, killed her, injured him. Just heartbreaking situation. And then it went down the rabbit hole of seeing how she's upset that she's in the situation that she's in and wants to get out, doesn't want to do 15 years in jail and prison. She's going to trial. It is heartbreaking. So
that husband lived?
The husband lived. But, then the other 2 people in the golf cart lived. It's just incomprehensible. But what it boils down to is this connection that we have with alcohol in our society, and people forgetting that although we have an opiate epidemic, we still have a significant alcohol issue. And so today's Patreon episode goes into this about, what's really going on with all this. So if you're a Patreon subscriber, that was a heck of a lead up, but that's your first bonus episode for November.
Awesome.
And I want to get you guys' thoughts on this because it's more so that you can talk to your friends and your families and your kids about what happens when we make stupid choices behind the wheel after drinking, because this is a movie we watched about this girl who was injured and then miraculously was recovered, and she made a comment to this guy as she was forgiving him. And I'd love to play this sometime. It's a movie. It's a little series called Midnight Mass, right? It's about vampires and everything. But there is a scene in this movie where this girl has been healed from an injury that she suffered from a hunter, shooting abroad and kind of left her paralyzed, and this forgiveness aspect. But she mentioned something that just really resonated with me, and she says, you stole from me. Like, you stole my future. You stole my what could have been. And I think about this girl who made a horrible decision to do a DUI driving and killed this lady before her life really began with this person that she chose. And she stole from him,
Yeah.
And just Patreon listeners, just go check it out. I want your guys' feedback, but really it's to have a conversation with your loved ones, because we've also got to be aware that, statistically at night, depending on what time you're out, there are people in there that are intoxicated. Right? Like I think it's like, and I can't remember the exact statistics, but it said that at midnight, 1 in 15 drivers are impaired.
And it goes up.
At 1 o'clock, 1 in 10. At 2 o'clock, it's like 1 in 7. So have a conversation with your loved ones. But anyway, that's a long drawn out, lead into our Patreon subscribers.
Become a Patreon.
Yeah, who help us push this podcast out a little bit further. And we're seeing some increase because of the help and support that you guys give. But let's give tribute to all these amazing folks.
Yes, we want to thank our Patreon subscribers. First, our champions, Shad and Freya Robison and Andrew Baird. Thank you to our champions.
Champion, man.
Champion.
That sounds
I don't know where I got that
European.
little accent right there.
Yeah.
Our pro level Patreon subscribers, Justin Robbins. Thank you, Justin. Our rookies, Earl Dyer, Wendell Wood, Brad Waldron, Ron and D. Loesch, and Sione and Mary Inuk.
Thank you,
guys. And our super fans, Karen Hardy, Steve Riggs, Jerem Thurston, Tara Butson, Holly Davies, Scott Foster, Chris Williams, Sensei KP Brown, Patrick Forsyth, Brock Ellerman, Christy Case, Kel Lim, and Faith Davis. Thank you all. We couldn't do this without you. If you want to become a Patreon, please check out patreon.com/addictathlete. You can look at the tiers that are available and get a lot of exclusive bonus episodes and exclusive gear.
Yeah, check it out. So thank you all so much. Couldn't do it without you. Okay, Marissa, the topic today, we got a question, and it's a good one, especially early in recovery when you've got situations that are still kind of a little bit fragile, relationships that are trying to be reestablished. You start reestablishing your home team. And then all of a sudden you get one of the first stressors of maybe a new recovery integrated into a family system, and that is, how do you avoid sensitive topics and conversations, specifically around topics that you didn't really want to talk about before that need to be discussed now, such as finances during holidays, Christmas? How do we avoid arguments? And this goes a little bit deeper than just like, what are your budgets? It's also like, how do we now engage in conversation with family and friends at Thanksgiving, at Christmas, at New Year's?
On some more sensitive
absolutely. And
topics.
the emphasis is kind of put on conversations revolving around budgeting, right?
Yeah.
Typically in relationships that have a substance abuse issue, there's usually a Disneyland parent, and then there's a parent that needs to be a parent. And, even in recovery, this can be a difficult conversation to have, because even with histories, and we've be kind of vulnerable today, even with histories, coming from traumatic experiences, I think that I tend to, I overdo things because I want to give what I didn't have, even if it means going into the red a little bit. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yep.
And it's become almost like a, like this unnecessary evil, I guess, because what am I really doing? Spending too much for too many things when really their appetites would be suppressed with, smaller things too.
Yeah, I remember one Christmas we did a San Diego trip. We went to SeaWorld. We had the funnest time. We did so many things down there. And when it came down to it, our kids had more fun at the hotel pool.
Yeah.
And I thought, really, what? I want to have some of these experiences, but are we going into debt trying to create these memories when a hotel pool could have sufficed?
Absolutely. You know, and with kids getting older, obviously, like, price tags also get a little higher. Yeah. And even with this year, we have a lot of inflation and things. And so, we've kind of discussed what to do. But for some reason, in my mind, I get into this scarcity thing where it's like, is this enough? And granted, I'm not talking we are like over the top and like, insane, but I get where this person's coming from, because it is a sensitive topic. And to avoid arguments over finances during the holidays, it's important to establish some honest communication with your loved one, right?
Yeah, because everybody's different, and everybody may flow in a different way because of certain pasts, like you were saying, because you lived a lot of life without and in that poverty level. Now that you have, you want to give overly to your kids, but other people come from other situations, like individuals who are new in recovery often fall towards guilt parenting.
Yeah.
Where
guilt parenting.
I really hurt my kids here. I wasn't there for this birthday or this activity or this tradition, so now I need to overbuy or overparent, trying to make up for it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different situations.
So I'll be honest again. I think I suffer from guilt parenting, which is kind of funny because I wouldn't have really thought about that, but I do. It's like, if it's a size of a shoe that doesn't fit and you have to go return it and get a bigger size, it's like, dang it. If it's, I wanted this and not that, guilt parenting. Thing is, our kids don't really care either. None of them have been like, how dare you give me, what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, they've never done that. So I don't know where that's coming from other than this perception that it could happen.
Yeah.
And guilt
or
parenting.
Fear of hurting their feelings or anything, right?
Yeah.
Having your kids wake up on Christmas morning and be let down.
Yeah, there's that
because
one.
There were a lot of those with you growing up.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. I mean, there were a lot of unanswered Santa Claus lists in my world, which may reinforce this. I tell this story, I tell the joke that like the one year, a joke is my life, that I wanted the Millennium Falcon toy, right? That's all I wanted. And so I did what I think was called praying, right? I just kind of like, oh, please, Santa Claus. Didn't realize that you needed to tell people about it. Like, hey, mention that to the two parental figures. Even though it probably wouldn't have happened, but
you
like,
didn't get Millennium.
Yeah, didn't get it. So I'm like, well, F that guy, right?
Yeah.
So guilt parenting. But to avoid arguments about this kind of stuff, the first thing you have to do is plan ahead, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you've got to set a budget and you got to discuss with not just your spouse, not just your partner, but like the family at large as well.
Yeah.
And you can do that fairly subtle. You don't have to be, tearing apart the fabric that makes magic happen in Christmas time. But you can also kind of like set some expectations and maybe preset some of that stuff by planning ahead.
And it's so important you say ahead, and some people think that's October. Really, that's further than that. Mostly when, like our family of 6, 4 kids, we have to be putting a certain amount away every month for birthdays and Christmas coming up for next year, like starting in January. So start planning further ahead so that you can really have something to pull from rather than like scraping for everything and then that's just going to add more stress and other expectations that are really frustrating.
And, I'll go out maybe on a not so popular thought right here too, but like, for instance, we have our Project ELF in full swing, and we wanted to close down and have all applicants in by yesterday, which was October 31st. We've sent out lots of applications to people that have been nominated and not had any return yet.
Yeah.
And it's like, people, by the time Thanksgiving rolls around, you're in critical space. Like we're pushing past what people can do because now our volunteers are now gearing up toward their own stuff. And so I'm noticing that people, they're slow to this kind of stuff. So planning ahead's not easy for some folks.
No.
But it's necessary.
It's very necessary.
I know, again, there's guilt in there. There's maybe some apprehension. But that's what this whole foundation's for, right? I mean, the Project ELF, experience is to help. So I get it. And sometimes, we think, oh, we've got another day, but like tomorrow's coming fast. So plan ahead.
Get on it.
The second one is you got to prioritize, right? You got to decide which holiday activities or gifts are most important and allocate your resources accordingly, right? To focus on the experience and meaningful gestures rather than the material possessions. This is something that we've kind of been leaning to quite a bit lately.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and sometimes it's, trying to identify maybe what do you hope the feeling will be at Christmas? What do you hope the holidays will be? And how do you create that? Not just with material possessions, but one of the big things for you is smells.
Yeah,
right?
For some reason.
And liking to have our house smell a certain way to bring out the essence of Christmas,
Yeah,
right?
sounds funny.
And yeah, but it is, and it can bring so much to the environment by having, we always have candles going and different things that like remind you of Christmas, that remind you of certain things. So identify some of those things, and maybe I look at how you can decorate or create your environment to bring about that feeling, not just through gifts.
Yeah. And, prioritizing also with your time as well, because again, there's a lot of extra shifts. A lot of folks try to pick up right during this season. Make sure that investment's a good return, because again, if you're doing your first, holiday sober, your kids and your family are going to want you more than they're going to want, the money. And I know sometimes that's not easy. It's easier said than done, but prioritize what you guys want, right? And it only happens through communication. Like you cannot, you cannot expect everything in your grand design to happen, because expectations set too high are going to create a lot of disappointment if not met. So share some responsibilities, right? Distribute the financial responsibilities among, the both of you.
Yeah.
Take turns gathering, hosting gatherings, potluck dinners and whatnot, and agree on like gift exchanges for your family members outside of your own family. Come up with a top tier of $10 and below.
Yeah.
This is kind of an interesting thing. If you compete for what child gives the parent the best gift, in your adult family, we start having problems. Yeah. Right? It's like, oh, well, you got dad a book. Well, I got him a trip to Europe. It's like, dude, what?
Yeah. Well, I think our family's pretty good with that. Me and my siblings usually get together. Sometimes we have something specific we want to get my dad, but then the rest of us will say, hey, we have a gift idea. Do you guys want to go in on that together? And,
Yeah.
My dad has everything he needs, I think. So there's only certain,
Absolutely.
Don't pour it back on everybody either.
To avoid arguments during the holiday seasons, you've also got to be flexible. You got to understand that everyone has a different financial status, and, be respectful to the limitations and avoid comparing yourself to others. This is a hard one, especially for kids. Mm-hmm. It's difficult. You got to remember that most of what the kids are going to want is your time, not so much the material. And so you can create an amazing experience with less if you're able to kind of make it, that bonding thing again. Yeah. And early in recovery, you're going to be stressed out. You've got to be cautious with this. Yeah. And, being flexible when you've already felt like you've been through the ringer is going to be incredibly difficult, but just understand where it's coming from. Well,
and looking at, like you say, this experiences rather than just gifts and things, there's I think in every city you can just Google free Christmas activities or low cost Christmas. Google is an amazing thing. That thing called the World Wide Web has everything.
Yeah, imagine
it's so easy to search stuff now, and you can find things, and then it may be gas and a snack after, but that's, you need to be prepared for that because gas is expensive right now too.
Yeah.
But you can find some really fun activities and things to do that bring that spirit of Christmas like we just talked about, but also, can have really a lot of memory building times.
Absolutely. Seek alternatives as well. Instead of gift exchanges, for expensive gifts, consider a homemade essential, baking bread. Do something else that's a little bit more low cost. Game nights, going out and doing some snowshoeing, doing some stuff together. It sounds silly, but again, it's these experiences that really hold more value. Yeah. Your kids are going to remember what they did with you leading up to the event versus what they got, because that's just the way that our minds work. Yeah.
So, I remember I had a friend who they always had a certain part of their house at Christmas that became the Santa's workshop, and that's where they always made family gifts for each other. And so they would each take turns with parents, mom or dad, and that would be a cutoff place to make a gift. And I thought that was such a cool idea to come up with something that they can create, whether it's, crocheting something, there's, woodworking, something, or like you say, even baking, there's other things you can do that make it a fun time, and they're going to remember that
for sure.
Forever.
Focus on the gratitude. Encourage gratitude and appreciation for the non-financial aspects of the holiday. Emphasize the importance of spending quality time together, and create memories and express some love and gratitude. You're going to find the connections that you'll have and the memories that you'll create being so much more valuable, and you'll be doing it sober, which means you're going to remember it. And if there's guilt, if there's situational issues that pop up, those are yours. Those are not your kids.
And sometimes you're going to have to sit with that guilt,
Yeah.
like we said, guilt parenting, rather than trying to cover it up by buying stuff. And that's okay. And part of guilt, some of the good parts of guilt, is to recognize that that's an identifier that you did something wrong, and that can be okay if it creates behavior change, if it creates change, rather than you trying to cover it, not to feel, or you trying to distract from it. You'll still feel it somewhere, sometime. You'll start to feel better by doing better rather than buying better.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to ask for help. I think this is a big thing, and trust me, I get it. And for those of you guys that have a hard time asking for help, I'm glad. I'm glad because it also shows that it's not something that you're doing because you're not trying. It's something that you're doing because it's a necessity. And so and I've seen this time in and time out, we've had folks that have been part of our Project ELF who have needed to be assisted during a holiday, who a year or two later have become like champions to help sponsor other families now because their situation has changed.
Yeah.
That's
the best, is when you can, accept help, but then in turn the next time be able to give help, even if it is maybe financially you can't, but you can come and help with the wrapping day or help with some other part of the service.
Absolutely.
Volunteering.
Absolutely. And that kind of gratitude does set a precedent for, I think, the upcoming year that you're about ready to take on. So it's a good question about how to avoid arguments, during stressful holiday seasons.
Yeah.
You have different stressors in July that you do in December.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. And there's a lot of, there's a lot of like emotions that get tossed around between holidays, like, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. But it doesn't have to necessarily mean potential relapse, right? You can avoid this kind of stuff.
And most of the time talking about it and being open with it and just saying, hey, I feel bad about this, or this is uncomfortable, helps take away the uncomfortableness of it.
Yeah.
So talk about it so that you can let some of that go.
Well, think about that too. When you're coming back into a situation, you may want to give them the world. And the guilt kicks in, the stress kicks in, the conversations about lost revenue kick in. Those are all great stress inducers, and the number one cause of relapse is stress.
Yeah.
So more than anything, make sure you got a support system around you too. Some people that aren't directly influenced by your decision making, but can also be relied upon as a mentor or teammate or a sponsor.
Listening ear, somebody to get you out and do some self-care to deal with some of the overwhelm and some of the stress.
Yeah. Well, there's also the factor of loneliness that takes place in this. Let's say that the whole script has been reversed now, and that it's not having a conversation about finances, but like you find yourself alone.
Yeah.
Right?
That you've maybe ruined and burned some of those relationships, and you don't have family to be around. That's difficult. I
find when that happens, the best thing you can do is lean deep into that gratitude and start getting out of your comfort zone by going to places. There are always meetings. There are always like service opportunities. There's always things to do.
Yeah. And like you say, be there for someone else who's maybe struggling. Like, go to a soup kitchen, go help where other people are in a worse situation than you, is always going to lift you. Yeah. Rather than looking and being upset and sad about what you're missing out on, find other ways to help others.
Todd mentioned something on the podcast that we just recorded that really kind of blew my mind, and I loved it. And he said it works really well with like youth and the teenagers who are struggling. He says, what I want you to do is tomorrow go to school early, and I want you to hold the door for everyone coming in, and I want you to give them compliments. And I just ran that scenario through my head about what that would look like. Of course, you get the kid that's like, man, I don't want to do that. That'd be freaking embarrassing, right?
Yeah,
I don't do
weird.
that. Yeah. But can you imagine what, I mean, just some simple gesture of like holding the door for a classmate that you don't even know, like, hey,
Yeah.
well, here we go again. Or, you know, hey, I like your shoes, whatever.
Yeah.
Todd said, you know, it could potentially save their life. And I said, yeah, and it could potentially save the life of the kid that you're holding the door for because you're seeing them. But adults, you can do that stuff too. You know, you can be that person, you know, that holds the door, that goes out and serves out of your inconvenience. And, you know,
Look for some holes in your community and find a way to do something about it.
And there's lots. I mean, shoot, picking up trash, just doing things that are outside your norm.
Yeah.
A little sense of gratitude. Like, you don't have to stay stuck in the muck.
Yeah.
So loneliness is a big contributor to problems during the holidays. And, you know, just be willing to stretch yourself out of your comfort zone. You know, maybe it's also time that you start hashing some of those problems that are still laying it like undone. I mean, you know, let bygones be bygones. Let's start dipping into that reservoir of forgiveness. Let's start being accountable. Remember, your addiction taught people how to treat you. Now you get to teach them how to treat you as the sober version.
Yeah.
Which, you know, may take years, decades, or a lifetime.
Yeah.
But no better time to start than now.
And maybe that's the time that you write a letter that you've been putting off and, you know, something that you need to get out and share.
Absolutely. And remember, I'll say this day in and day out because I truly believe in the principle. It's your resistance to what is that causes your suffering. So if you're resistant to, you know, getting clean, it's causing suffering. If you're resistant to talking to a family member,
maybe you need to talk to that.
Time to lean into it.
Yeah.
Which is funny, right? It seems so simplistic, but the application of it is difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, there are family members in my world that I just don't feel comfortable chatting with because I'm like, it's not going to bring any value.
Yeah.
Am I resistant to it? No. But I know what the return on investment's going to be.
Yeah.
So I also know that there are situational issues that I'm like, yeah, I'd rather put that off. And I'm good at procrastinating, but I also know, all right, there's a time and there's a line drawn in the sand. I've got to cross this now.
Yeah.
You know,
need to address it.
And that's never easy to do either during the holidays.
Yeah.
You know, so to kind of maybe sum up this question, you know, core communication means that you're going in as a reflective listener and a search talker. We've talked about this a lot, right?
Yeah.
If you start feeling as though the conversation's leading into an argument, that means either A, you're beginning to reactively listen to what's being said, you know, or B, you might have shifted from search talking into control talking.
Yeah.
And you've got to be aware of that because those are great instigators for a mental breakdown and for a potential relapse.
For sure.
Right?
For sure.
Reflective listening basically means that you're hearing what they're saying and you're reflecting it back by kind of like recapitulating like what they're saying to you. You know, I understand that you want to spend this money on this gift for this child.
It sounds like you're saying.
And it sounds like that would be a really good thing.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping to understand how we then help, you know, buy for this little one who, you know, won't have the budget for what they want.
Yeah.
You know, help me understand a little bit more about the give and the take. It's hard, but it can be done.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, you got to have a mutual agreement that like, we're going to work this stuff out. The minute you get angry and upset and you start to react, the game is over.
Yeah.
Right? It leads into that kind of stuff.
Yeah. It's never healthy.
No. And so, you know, I think this is it's a strange topic because it feels like, we just barely got done with Halloween and now we're leading into this, but you know, plan ahead, forecast.
Yeah.
Don't wait until the last week and then have guilty parenting skills come forward.
Yeah.
That's me.
And over.
Yeah.
Well, and I sometimes like we'll have a list and sit there and we get everything on the list. And then as it gets closer to Christmas, there's some huge sale. And so I'm like, oh, well, that's a great deal. It's like girl math. Mm-hmm. That means I'm saving so much money. So I buy more and I buy more.
Yeah.
And then what do we have? Just overbuying. And it's not needed. It's the memories that really count.
And I think that's one of the funniest things. I mean, even all the stuff that we've bought, some of the things they love the most are those goofy blankets you got them, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, I get it. But have these conversations, you guys. Don't be afraid. And if you need some help, if you need a mediator, jump on. I'll be more than happy to help. And for those of you guys that have received your Project ELF application, send it in. Send it back. You're running out of time.
Waiting to go shopping.
Yeah, absolutely. We're ready to help. So, yeah, I thought it was interesting just kind of coming at a time where, I don't want to wait and chamber this till the 1st of December. It's something we got to talk about because these are real stressors that can cause a lot of broken relationships.
Yeah.
So don't wait. Don't hesitate.
For sure.
Beyond that, athletes, I just want to thank you all for joining us today. This episode will be released as a podcast, I think Thursday or Friday this week. So if you had to jump off and your boss was like, hey, what are you doing? Don't worry. You can come back and listen to this among other podcasts that we have on our website, plus whatever podcast platform you listen to. We love answering questions, so please get the dialogue going. For all you Patreon subscribers, I'm glad that you were able to grab that new episode today. Jump on patreon.com/Addict2Athlete for more. And, really, if there's anything going on that you feel like you need a little help with, you got a team behind you, so don't think you have to do it alone. And until next time, we hope that this resonates in your heart and you can help turn that mess into a message.